My world collapsed when I learned my son made a fake bomb threat. Anger, shame, and fear consumed me, but the moment he revealed his reason, my horror turned into something darker, a secret that left me shaking and speechless forever. When the police called saying my 12-year-old son Leo had been arrested for calling in a bomb threat that evacuated the entire school and canceled the district wrestling tournament that he'd been training for all year, I couldn't believe it. Leo was sitting in an interrogation room with two detectives while the wrestling coach Mr. Adams paced outside yelling about pressing federal charges. The school resource officer explained that Leo had called 911 claiming there was a bomb in the gymnasium, causing complete chaos as 800 kids and their families fled the building while the bomb squad swept every inch of the facility. Once they determined it was a prank call, they traced the number and hauled Leo in. "Leo, what were you thinking?" I asked when they let me in the room, my hands shaking as I looked at my skinny 12-year-old in handcuffs. "I had to stop the match, Dad," he said quietly. Mr. Adams burst through the door even though the detective told him to wait outside. "Your son is going to federal prison. Bomb threats are terrorism. He traumatized hundreds of children. You're the one traumatizing children," Leo said, looking Mr. Adams straight in the eye. "I'm a decorated coach with 15 years of experience," Adams said, his face getting red. "My team has won 6 state championships. Your son is just bitter because he's not good enough for varsity." "Tell them what you do to us," Leo said, his voice steady even though his hands were shaking. Adams laughed nervously. "I push my athletes to excellence. Not everyone can handle real training. You make us run in garbage bags to sweat out water weight," Leo said. "You tell us we're disgusting pigs if we weigh even 1 pound over. You made Jackson run laps until he passed out because he ate breakfast. That's called discipline," Adams said quickly. But the detectives were listening now. "Wrestling has weight classes. It's part of the sport. You gave Mike an eating disorder," Leo continued. "He throws up after every meal now. His mom doesn't know because you told him real wrestlers control their weight no matter what." "Kids are dramatic," Adams said. But sweat was visible on his forehead. "I've never told anyone to throw up. You said if we couldn't make weight naturally, we should do whatever it takes," Leo said. "You gave us tips on hiding it from our parents. You said you did it when you were competing." I stared at Adams in horror as pieces started clicking into place. Leo's constant anxiety about food, the way he'd stopped eating dinner with us, how he'd been living on rice cakes and water. "You've been giving eating disorders to 12-year-olds? I asked Adams. "I teach discipline and self-control," Adams said defensively. "Parents today coddle their kids too much. But today was the last straw," Leo said, and everyone turned to look at him. "This morning you brought in a box of laxatives," Leo said, his voice cracking. "You said everyone had to take them before weigh-ins to make sure we made weight for the tournament." "That's insane," Adams said, but his voice had gone up an octave. "I would never give medications to students." "You handed them out in the locker room," Leo said. "You said it was standard practice for serious wrestlers. You said if we didn't take them, we'd let the whole team down and you'd make us run suicides until we puked on Monday." "Laxatives?" I said, feeling sick. "You were going to give laxatives to children?" "He's lying," Adams said, backing toward the door. "Kids make things up when they're in trouble." "Check his office," Leo said to the detectives. "The box is in his bottom drawer. He bought 3 boxes. Extra strength. He said we each had to take 4. One detective left the room immediately while the other one kept Adams from leaving. I wanted to punch him right there. 4 laxative pills could seriously hurt a child," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "They could become dangerously dehydrated." "We were supposed to wrestle after taking them," Leo said, tears finally falling. "We would have been on the mats with stomach cramps and no control over our bodies in front of hundreds of people." "That's ridiculous," Adams said, but he was sweating through his shirt now. "No coach would do that. You did it last year too," Leo said. "Clay told me. He said 3 kids had accidents during their matches, but you told them it was their fault for not being disciplined enough." The detective came back, holding an evidence bag with 3 boxes of extra strength laxatives. "Found these in his desk exactly where the kid said." Adams went white. "Those are for my personal use." "3 boxes?" the detective asked. "This is a misunderstanding," Adams stammered. "I have digestive issues. You were going to force children to take laxatives before athletic competition," the detective said, his voice getting angry. "That's assault. That's child endangerment. He made us all lose weight in dangerous ways and today he was going to poison us," Leo said simply. "I had to stop the match. No one would listen when we complained about him before." Adams opened his mouth but no words came out. Just panic sputtering as he looked between the detectives and the evidence bag. The second detective pulled out his handcuffs and moved toward Adams while Detective Kelly read him his rights for child endangerment and assault charges. Adams kept backing up until he hit the wall, his hands shaking as the metal clicked around his wrists. The superintendent arrived 20 minutes later and immediately suspended Adams from all duties while parents started flooding the station parking lot. Over the next 3 days, local news vans parked outside our house and reporters knocked on our door every few hours asking for interviews. Neil Cook called to take Leo's case and explained that the bomb threat charges could be reduced through juvenile diversion if we cooperated fully with the abuse investigation. 2 weeks passed before Adams's attorney released a statement to the newspaper calling the whole thing a witch hunt against a coach who just wanted excellence for his athletes. The wrestling boosters started a legal defense fund that raised $8,000 in 48 hours from parents who thought Adams was railroaded. When Leo finally returned to the school after a week of meetings with lawyers and detectives, half the kids in his grade called him a hero for standing up to Adams while the other half blamed him for ruining their championship season. Some wrestlers thanked him in the hallway, but others turned their backs when he walked past. 3 weeks later at Adams' preliminary hearing, Leo sat in the witness chair and described running in garbage bags in 90-degree heat until his vision went blurry. His voice stayed steady even when Adams' lawyer tried to make him look like a weak kid who couldn't handle tough coaching. The judge listened to Leo describe the daily weigh-ins where Adams would scream at anyone who gained even half a pound and make them do wall sits until their legs gave out. She ordered Adams to have no contact with any current or former wrestlers and suspended his teaching license until the trial ended. That same week, Donald Perez organized a meeting at the community center where 30 wrestling parents discussed starting an independent youth club with proper safety rules and nutrition guidance. They asked if Leo might feel comfortable joining once he felt ready, but I could see he wasn't sure if he ever wanted to wrestle again. Detective Kelly spent hours going through school financial records and found proof that Adams had been getting cash bonuses from the boosters for every championship the team won. The payments ranged from $500 to $2,000 per tournament victory, all paid through a private account the school board claimed they never knew existed. The district's lawyers scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal while more evidence piled up. Leo started seeing Dr. Hughes twice a week for therapy focused on eating disorders and the trauma of Adams' abuse. She explained it would take months or maybe years to undo the damage of being taught that food was the enemy and that his worth depended on making weight. The State Athletic Association sent investigators to interview every wrestler from the past 5 years, and found similar problems at 2 other district schools where coaches used the same dangerous weight-cutting methods. Their report ran 40 pages and recommended complete overhaul of youth wrestling oversight. Meanwhile, Neil worked out a deal where Leo would do 40 hours of community service at a crisis hotline and write a public apology letter for the bomb threat. The federal terrorism charges would be dropped once he completed everything, which felt like a huge relief after weeks of worrying he might end up in juvenile detention. Adams' trial date got set for 3 months out, but his lawyer immediately filed motions claiming they needed more time to review what they called an overwhelming amount of discovery materials. The judge granted a 2-week extension but warned that she wouldn't tolerate unnecessary delays. More wrestlers came forward each week with stories about Adams forcing them to spit into cups to lose water weight or making them exercise in rubber suits until they nearly passed out. The evidence kept growing while Adams stayed silent on his lawyer's advice. Parents divided into camps with some still defending Adams as a tough but fair coach while others demanded criminal prosecution and civil lawsuits. School board meetings turned into shouting matches with security guards stationed at every entrance. Leo struggled to eat normal meals without feeling guilty while I watched him push food around his plate and claim he wasn't hungry. The therapist said this was normal and would take time to overcome. Detective Kelly found more financial irregularities including equipment purchases that never were delivered and tournament fees that went straight into Adams' personal account. The corruption ran deeper than just the dangerous coaching methods. Other coaches from around the state started calling to share their own concerns about the win-at-all-cost culture in youth wrestling. Some admitted they'd seen warning signs but hadn't spoken up because Adams had such a successful program. The prosecutor built a case that included testimony from 15 current and former wrestlers plus medical records showing dangerous weight loss and dehydration in athletes. Adams' lawyer kept trying to get evidence thrown out on technicalities but the judge denied most of their motions. Leo slowly started talking more in therapy about the daily fear of stepping on the scale and the constant hunger that became normal life during wrestling season. Dr. Hughes documented everything for the criminal case. The school's insurance company sent representatives to assess their liability while parents lined up lawyers for civil suits that could cost the district millions. Officials who had praised Adams for years now claimed they had no idea about his methods. Neil prepared Leo for his community service, explaining that helping other kids in crisis might actually help him process his own trauma. The bomb threat felt like ancient history compared to everything that had happened since. 3 months felt like 3 years as we waited for Adams' trial while trying to rebuild some kind of normal life. Leo's weight slowly increased to a healthy range, though he still struggled with anxiety around meals. The state passed emergency regulations requiring medical supervision for any youth athlete trying to cut weight for competition. Adams' name became toxic in coaching circles, though some die-hard supporters still insisted he was persecuted. Our family learned to navigate the strange new reality of being at the center of a scandal that had exposed systematic abuse in what everyone thought was just small-town sports. 3 weeks later, the hospital called about Mike needing emergency treatment when his mom found him passed out in the bathroom. The doctor explained that his body went into shock from trying to eat normal portions after months of starvation. They had to put him on a special feeding plan with tubes and monitors while his organs learned to process food again. 2 other wrestlers ended up in the same ward with similar problems. The district's insurance people showed up with clipboards and started asking questions about liability coverage. They wanted copies of every practice schedule and weight chart from the past 3 years. Leo spent an entire Saturday writing his court-ordered apology letter at the kitchen table. He wrote 12 drafts before Neil said it was good enough to submit. The letter explained how scared he was that someone would die if he didn't stop that tournament. He took full responsibility for the panic he caused and promised to find better ways to handle problems. The judge read it in chambers and nodded her approval. I started going to a support group that met in the hospital basement every Tuesday night. There were 8 other parents there whose kids had eating disorders from sports. The facilitator passed around tissues as we all talked about the signs we missed. One mom said her daughter had been hiding weights in her pockets during doctor visits for 2 years. Another dad found laxative wrappers hidden all over his son's room. We all felt stupid for not seeing what was happening. The Boosters Club meeting turned into a war zone when they tried to vote on keeping Adams' lawyer fund going. Half the room wanted to support their winning coach, while the other half screamed about child abuse. Someone threw a chair and the police had to break it up. They started requiring security guards at every meeting after that. Detective Kelly pulled me aside at the courthouse and showed me a binder full of evidence they'd collected. She had medical records from 15 different boys showing dangerous weight loss patterns. There were text messages from Adams telling kids to skip meals and lie to their parents. She had receipts for the laxatives and testimony from 3 different stores where he bought them. The case was solid, and Adams was going to prison. Leo started his community service at the Crisis Hotline Center downtown. He had to answer phones for 4 hours every Saturday and Sunday. The supervisor taught him about mandatory reporting laws and proper channels for abuse complaints. Leo said he wished someone had told him about these options before he called in the bomb threat. He helped 3 different kids find resources for problems at home during his first month there. The sports psychologist came to evaluate the whole wrestling team and spent 2 days doing interviews. Her report showed that 14 out of 20 boys had signs of eating disorders. She found evidence of binge eating, purging, and extreme calorie restriction in kids as young as 11. The report went straight to the prosecutor's office and the civil lawyers. The school board called an emergency meeting and actually admitted they screwed up. They announced new rules requiring monthly weight checks by the school nurse for all athletes. Coaches had to take training about eating disorders and warning signs. They also said an independent monitor would watch all practices for the next 2 years. Adams' lawyer finally convinced him to change his plea after seeing all the evidence. He agreed to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for 3 years probation and no jail time. The deal included a permanent ban from coaching anyone under 18 and mandatory psychological treatment. The prosecutor wanted more, but said it was better than risking a trial where Adams might walk free. The sentencing hearing packed the courtroom with wrestlers and parents. 4 boys stood up to read victim impact statements about how Adams ruined their relationship with food. Mike's voice cracked as he described throwing up blood and still being afraid to eat breakfast. Jackson talked about passing out during his sister's birthday party because he hadn't eaten in 3 days. Another boy said he still couldn't look at food without calculating how many laps he'd have to run. Leo was the last one to speak and his hands shook as his paper. He talked about learning to eat dinner with our family again without feeling guilty. He described the fear of stepping on a scale and seeing he'd gained weight. He said recovery meant accepting that being healthy was more important than being the right weight for wrestling. Adams sat there staring at the table while the boys spoke. His lawyer kept whispering in his ear, but Adams just nodded without looking up. The parents in the gallery were crying and even the bailiff had to wipe his eyes. The judge took a 20-minute recess before coming back with the sentence. She walked back to the bench with papers in her hand and cleared her throat before reading Adams' sentence out loud to the packed courtroom. The judge looked straight at Adams and told him he was getting the 3 years probation as agreed in the plea deal, but she was adding 500 hours of community service specifically focused on eating disorder awareness programs. She also ordered him to register with the state's child abuse registry, which meant he could never work with kids again in any capacity, not just coaching. Her voice got harder as she called his actions a complete betrayal of the sacred trust between coach and athlete, saying he took vulnerable children who looked up to him and systematically destroyed their health for trophies. Adams stood there with his head down while his lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, and I could see several parents in the gallery nodding as the judge spoke about how coaches are supposed to protect kids, not poison them. The bailiff handed Adams paperwork to sign while parents started filing out of the courtroom, some looking satisfied and others still angry that he wasn't going to jail. 2 weeks later, we got a call from the district's lawyers about settlement agreements they were offering to avoid civil lawsuits. They offered to cover all of Leo's medical expenses, including ongoing therapy for the next 3 years, plus compensation for pain and suffering. 8 families total got similar offers, and the district also agreed to implement comprehensive athlete welfare programs with monthly check-ins by school nurses and mandatory nutrition education for all coaches. The lawyer said they were basically admitting fault without actually saying it out loud and recommended we take the deal since it guaranteed Leo would get the help he needed. We signed the papers that afternoon and Leo's first therapy appointment was scheduled for the following week. The therapist specialized in eating disorders in young athletes and spent the first session just letting Leo talk about everything that happened without judgment. Over the next few months, Leo slowly started trying new activities to stay active without the pressure of competition. He found a rock climbing club that met at the indoor gym downtown where the focus was on personal challenges rather than beating other people. The instructor there emphasized that climbing was about problem solving and trusting your body, not about being the smallest or lightest person on the wall. Leo came home from his third session actually excited about something physical for the first time since the wrestling disaster, saying it felt good to use his body for fun instead of punishment. He started going twice a week and even made friends with other kids who climbed just because they enjoyed it. 6 months after the bomb threat that started everything, Leo got a letter asking him to testify at a state legislature hearing about protecting young athletes from abuse. The committee was considering new laws that would require independent oversight of all school sports programs and wanted to hear from kids who had experienced coaching abuse firsthand. Leo was nervous about speaking in front of politicians but said he wanted to help make sure other kids didn't go through what his team did. We drove to the state capitol where Leo sat at a long table with a microphone and told his story to a room full of legislators who actually seemed to be listening. He explained how Adams had normalized dangerous weight loss methods and made them feel like failures if they couldn't meet impossible standards. His testimony, along with several other young athletes, helped pass new laws requiring independent monitors at practices and mandatory reporting of any coach-prescribed weight loss methods. Dr. Hughes saw Leo for a checkup right after the legislative hearing and said his physical health had largely recovered from the months of malnutrition. His weight was back in the healthy range for his age and height, though she said he'd need continued monitoring to make sure there weren't any long-term effects on his growth and development. She told Leo she was proud of his courage in speaking up, though it meant getting arrested and facing federal charges initially. Meanwhile, the wrestling program at the school started up again in the fall under a new coach named Daniel McGregor, who had completely different ideas about training. McGregor emphasized technique and safety over winning at any cost and actually encouraged the wrestlers to eat balanced meals and stay hydrated. He banned all the dangerous practices Adams had used like garbage bag runs and extreme dehydration and posted the new rules clearly in locker room. Several boys who had quit the team under Adams decided to give wrestling another chance with the new approach, and parents were allowed to observe practices whenever they wanted. Donald Perez's son, Mike, had been in intensive therapy since everything came out and was making remarkable progress in his recovery from the eating disorder Adams had given him. Mike actually started mentoring younger wrestlers about maintaining healthy relationships with food and exercise, sharing his story to help them avoid the same traps. His transformation from a kid who was throwing up blood to someone who could eat normally and enjoy sports again gave other parents hope that their kids could recover too. Donald told me at a school event that Mike was like a different person now, actually laughing and enjoying life instead of obsessing over every calorie. The State Athletic Association decided to strip Adams of all his honors after reviewing the evidence from the criminal case. They removed his name from the Coaching Hall of Fame and took down his championship banners from the school gym, though some boosters protested and said they were erasing history. The district stood firm on their decision, with the superintendent saying they couldn't celebrate someone who had systematically abused children even if he had won championships. The empty spots on the gym wall where his banners used to hang became a reminder of what happens when winning becomes more important than kids' well-being. About 8 months after everything happened, Leo received a letter from the mayor's office inviting him to a ceremony at City Hall. They wanted to give him a citizenship award for his courage in protecting other children, even though they acknowledged his methods were wrong and dangerous. Leo accepted the award quietly at the ceremony, just saying he did what he had to do when no one else would listen, and hoped kids would learn there were better ways to report abuse. The mayor shook his hand, and several people in the audience stood up to applaud, including other parents from the wrestling team. Our family slowly found a new normal, where food wasn't the enemy anymore, and Leo could just be a regular kid without the pressure of making weight. He joined the robotics club at the school, and discovered he actually loved building things way more than he ever liked wrestling. The club met after school to design and program robots for competitions, but it was a totally different environment where collaboration mattered more than individual performance. Leo spent hours working on mechanical designs and learning to code, coming home excited to tell us about gear ratios and sensor arrays instead of worrying about what he for lunch. 3 weeks later, Detective Kelly showed up at our door with a folder full of papers and a tired smile on her face. She sat at our kitchen table while Leo worked on his robot in the living room, explaining how our case had triggered investigations in 12 other districts across the state. The Athletic Commission was reviewing every wrestling program after finding similar patterns of abuse in 4 other schools. She showed us letters from parents whose kids had finally spoken up after hearing about Leo's case on the news. One mother wrote that her son had been hiding laxatives in his bedroom for months, too scared to refuse when his coach demanded he take them. Detective Kelly said the state was passing new rules requiring medical staff at all weigh-ins and making coaches get certified in eating disorder recognition. She thanked Leo for having the courage to speak up when adults had failed to protect them. Leo just nodded and went back to adjusting servo motors on his robot, but I saw him wipe his eyes when she left. 6 months passed before we heard about Adams again. The prosecutor called to tell us Adams had been caught coaching at a private gym 20 miles away, which violated his probation terms. Someone recognized him from the news coverage and reported it to the authorities. The judge didn't hesitate this time and sentenced him to 6 months in county jail, plus extended probation. Parents from the wrestling team texted me their relief that he wouldn't be able to find new victims. The private gym owner claimed he didn't know about Adams' history, but surveillance footage showed Adams making kids run in plastic suits just like before. Almost a year after the bomb threat, Leo got invited to speak at a state conference on youth sports safety. He practiced his speech for weeks, writing and rewriting on index cards about what happened to the team. At the conference, 200 coaches and administrators listened as Leo explained how Adams had controlled them through fear and shame. He described the daily weigh-ins, the punishment runs, the way they learned to hide their suffering from their parents. When he finished, the entire room stood up and applauded. 3 different coaches came up afterward to thank him for opening their eyes to warning signs they'd been missing. One coach admitted he'd been using similar tactics without realizing the damage he was causing. The former wrestlers started meeting at Mike's house once a month to support each other through recovery. They'd order pizza and actually eat it without counting calories or feeling guilty. Jackson's mom drove him over even though they'd moved to another district. The boys would talk about their therapy sessions and celebrate small victories like gaining healthy weight or enjoying dessert. Mike's mom told me it was the first time she'd seen him laugh while eating since everything happened. They made a group chat where they'd check in when someone was struggling with food anxiety. Leo applied to a summer engineering camp at the state university and got his acceptance letter in May. The program focused on robotics and coding, things that had nothing to do with weight or physical performance. His doctor wrote a letter saying Leo had gained 20 healthy pounds and his blood work showed he was thriving. Leo spent weeks preparing for camp, ordering books on mechanical engineering and watching YouTube videos about circuit boards. He packed his suitcase 2 weeks early, excited about spending the summer building things instead of destroying his body. The camp director called to make sure we were comfortable with the meal plan and assured us they had counselors trained in supporting kids with eating disorder histories. Mike's high school graduation happened on a humid June evening in the football stadium. He'd been chosen to give one of the students' speeches about overcoming challenges. Standing at the podium in his cap and gown, Mike talked about learning to trust adults again after being betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect him. He thanked his therapist, his parents, and then he thanked Leo by name for having the courage to stop the cycle of abuse. The whole stadium erupted in applause while Leo turned red in his seat next to me. Mike's voice cracked when he said Leo saved his life by making that phone call. After graduation, Mike's family invited us to their celebration dinner where Mike ate a full meal without any signs of anxiety. The school district's new athlete protection program got attention from the Department of Education as a model for the country. They named it the Courage Initiative after the kids who spoke up, requiring independent medical oversight of all sports programs. School boards from other states started calling to learn about implementation. The superintendent asked Leo to help create a video about recognizing coaching abuse that would be shown to all student athletes. Leo agreed but said he wanted the other wrestlers involved too. They filmed it over 2 days, each boy sharing what warning signs other kids should watch for. 2 years after that terrifying phone call about the bomb threat, Leo was helping coach the middle school robotics team and filling out college applications. He still met with his therapist once a month to check in, but mostly he was just a regular teenager worried about SAT scores and prom dates. His room was full of robot parts and programming books instead of wrestling trophies. At dinner, he'd eat normal portions without that haunted look he used to have. He'd gained enough weight that his doctor said he was perfectly healthy for his height. Sometimes I'd catch him mentoring younger kids on the robotics team about standing up for themselves if adults crossed boundaries. He never forgot what happened, But he'd turned his trauma into purpose, making sure other kids knew they had options beyond desperate measures when adults failed them. Thanks for hanging out with me and wondering through all those moments. Definitely been a fun little journey asking questions together.